Is this a huge paradox that a manager who failed to win the Champions League for more than a decade, each time having such an initial objective and resources to achieve it, is widely considered the best on the planet? Well, generally yes. It's really strange, but only not in Guardiola's particular case, the man who used to be at the center of attention for all sorts of reasons. There is a lot of ways and facts in order to prove the Spaniards' unparalleled greatness, but here is the detail that impresses the most, me personally. In 14 Champions League campaigns that 3 various teams guided by Josep have spent so far, only in 2 of them they approached the playoff stage being not on top of the bookmakers' charts. Moreover, in 2016, after the stunning elimination of Barcelona in the quarter-final, Bayern picked up the torch as a hot favorite, just to be defeated in the next round by the pesky Atletico of Diego Simeone. Simply put, only once the side guided by Guardiola hasn't been labeled as a main contender in this tournament. It's been the aging and unripe Manchester City in the 2016-2017 season. Indeed, the odds could be misleading, and here is a prime example of it, but such permanent presence in the predictions in an extremely prestigious role to a certain extent also can be regarded as a major success. Of course, the status of perennial favorite didn't bring Guardiola the trophy itself, and never will, but on the other hand, this high esteem in the minds of pundits, fans and bookmakers was no other than a testimony of credibility, respect and recognition of prodigious professional skills that the grey-bearded Josep gained and displayed over his glittering coaching career. In the football of high level, among the high-profile managers, he was and remains the biggest constant for years and years, which is definitely harder to accomplish than just win the Champions League. Another significant fact: throughout all this time, the Spaniards' teams have never been in a genuine crisis. There were visible ups and downs for sure, as well as fluctuations of form, but the curve of results was always placed quite high. Roughly speaking, his teams were in form about 90% of the time, and on the marathon distance of the National League, the perfect structure of play, paired with individual brilliance of stars, has been able to cover all the eventualities, almost without fail. To this date, Guardiola won astounding 10 league titles out of possible 13, and the 11th is surely coming. In the long run, his teams were and continue to be the most reliable and predictable. That's why it was so difficult for bookmakers to resist the temptation to automatically transfer the impressions to a competition with a completely different formula and philosophy, where concrete circumstances and banal luck are coming to the fore much more often. Something that the ever-eloquent Josep always was and is ready to admit. Losing 6 Champions League ties over the years by the narrowest of margins, both in regulation and extra time, Guardiola has healthy reasons to think this way. This City side, despite its terrific form and elegance, could also face the same problem. To tell you the truth, nobody at this level is immune or insured from it. But the Spaniards' sides suffered in the most prestigious European club competition not only due to lack of fortune. At times, they have been let down by Josep's insatiable desire to dominate every minute of every match, as a result accumulating big and insurmountable gap in the domestic league and investing a plenty of energy in it. His teams not once or twice approached the crucial stages of the Champions League, been tired and sluggish, and eventually have paid a heavy price for it. the 2013-2014 campaign, when Bayern visibly lost its way in April and were thrashed by Real Madrid. It's a clear illustration of it. But in 2015, 2018 and 2021, Guardiola also didn't plan the peak of performance well, and as a consequence of it, each time his teams were hardly recognizable in the games they lost. As for the Spaniard himself, he was becoming probably too impulsive, reflecting and reacting to the problems and trying to disguise the weaknesses of his side. For instance, on the eve of the Champions League final against Chelsea in 2021, the Manchester City manager made a tactical reshuffle in search of more pace and mobility, and not only implemented a formation with no strikers, which was hardly a surprise given Guardiola's preferences, but suddenly benched the ponderous Rodri, who has been an undisputed starter for almost 2 years. By doing it, he not only hadn't been able to find an antidote to the Blues, a bogey opponent back at the time, but also palpably confused himself and his players, disturbing their natural rhythm. Could this problem strike again? Well, it's highly unlikely, bearing in mind that this term the citizens found their best game not so long ago, somewhere between the end of February and early March. Moreover, the proverbial Winter World Cup that mixed all the cards for some top clubs, in the particular case of the champions of England, was rather an ally than an obstacle, by giving all their protagonists an additional rest. Erling Haaland, as we all know, missed the tournament completely. As for Ederson, Kevin De Bruyne and Ilkay Gundogan, they either played very little or left Qatar much earlier than they anticipated. Only Bernardo Silva and some English internationals spent really heavy minutes at the World Cup. Julian Alvarez remains a joker in the Guardiola's pack, but it didn't affect the situation too much, keeping in mind that the Spaniard has at his disposal a quality bench, even if at the moment it's not particularly deep. So there is no reason to believe that City will approach the crucial part of the Champions League being winded or sated. On the contrary, it seems that the team is currently at zenith, both physically and mentally. The other major issue that prevented the citizens from winning the Champions League for so long was effective absence of superstars. As good as they are, De Bruyne, Bernardo and Gundogan, we can add to this list Sergio Aguero, who has been a key figure at the dawn of Guardiola's tenure. We were unable to make an individual impact in the moments of adversity in the previous years. In the Premier League, where every contest and point are counting equally, almost immaculate system of passing and cutting offense when 7, 8 or even more players could make an exclamation point in the form of goal in each prolonged combination. The presence of a superhero simply wasn't needed. But in the knockout phase, when there is here and now only, and there is a very little room for error, the pressure inevitably increased, especially amid, in general, much more powerful adversaries. In the moments like this, even City's sophisticated offense at times froze up, and somebody's individual skills were required. Very much like it was in the distant past when in 2009 Andres Iniesta's smashing shot bailed out Guardiola's Barca at the Stamford Bridge, when all the other pure team resources already ran out, or in 2011 when Lionel Messi made a difference by himself at the Santiago Bernabeu in a very tough away match. The citizens have never got the answers like this from their leaders in the Champions League, and that's why Haaland came last summer. It's worth mentioning that the arrival of the Norwegian brought not only pluses, and it took a lot of efforts and small tactical tweaks from Guardiola in order to accommodate him and smooth things over. Being a prolific goal scorer, Haaland has a peculiar style of play. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he performs in an isolated mode, very much like goalkeepers do, mindful that the burly Erling is rarely touching the ball. At certain points, one-third of his catches represent shots on goal. The Spaniard was forced to accept that his team will lose both in possession and unpredictability, and only by the late February the manager has been able to reliably disguise the weaknesses which stem from playing with effective 9 outfield players most of the time. Guardiola put one of defenders forward, usually it's John Stones, who is now acting more like an additional holding midfielder and helping to distribute the ball, whilst Haaland, who is seldom participating in combinations, could dedicate himself almost entirely to goal-scoring exploits. And he is extremely good at it. The Man City forward recently broken the Premier League record of the most goals scored by one player in a single season, surpassing Andy Cole and Alan Shearer, who spent at the top of the list almost 30 years. Haaland is also a genuine Ballon d'Or contender, but the upcoming matches versus Real Madrid would be a moment of truth for him. Could he make a necessary impact in the games of such magnitude? Anyway, it would be a legitimate test for him, test for leadership and correspondence to a superstar status. It would be an excellent check of the whole city's ambitions and maturity as well. The irony is that both teams are entitled to consider themselves a bogey opponent for each other. The difference is that Real Madrid is the toughest nemesis for anyone who encroaches on their Champions League supremacy, while the citizens with their possession-orientated football are a tricky foe specifically for Los Blancos, that are a soft and finesse team which don't like to chase the ball time after time. The main intrigue of this tie is simple and complex simultaneously. There is little doubt that Guardiola and company will have more ball and goal-scoring opportunities over two legs, but would it be enough? And this is not an idle question at all, if we recall that last year City had a considerable edge in both these categories, but weren't able to fend off Real at the end of second leg in Madrid. This time the English club will play the decisive match at home, which gives an edge at least on paper. The citizens are looking fresher after the last two Champions League campaigns. They got all the experience they needed and have a lot of other tangible and intangible things on their side. But the undeniable assets of Real Madrid remain exclusive composure and the unique ability to raise their game in the decisive moments and take all the chances. And this is the main ingredient of success in the Champions League knockout stage. So in my book, it's a classic 50-50 disposition. And the last, but not the least, the recent history up to 10-15 years of Champions League tells us that major success follows those managers who just stepped in. Actually, since 2009 inclusively, in all but 3 cases, the trophy for the first time within a stint at the specific club, this is an important clarification, has been won by a head coach who worked there only for a year or even less. Add to this Jose Mourinho and Jupp Heynckes, who did the business in their second season, and you will see that the only genuine outlier is Jurgen Klopp, Guardiola's arch-rival. So why the success so much favors those who just arrived? Well, the answer is obvious. It is very much consistent with the trend of modern football, which is getting faster and faster, not only directly on the pitch. In reality, all the processes are gaining momentum, and if a manager is competent enough, if his football ideas are fresh and clear, and he is capable to transmit them rapidly to a competitive squad, He usually has his best shot in the first 12, sometimes even 7 or 8 months. The further, the more difficult it is. Numerous stresses, intrusive media attention, and all sorts of pressure within a club and dressing room gradually drastically decrease the productivity of coach, even of those who already won the coveted prize, let alone those who fail to do it. As for Guardiola, who is trying to get there in his 7th season at the Etihad Stadium, he is unique even there, meticulously and patiently, like a true perfectionist, which he most certainly is, building his team bit by bit, brick by brick, and stably getting better. If he will finally prevail, no matter, this year or later, it would be a crowning moment of long and grueling work, full of disappointments, perseverance, and hours of desperation, a moment which can make this story truly beautiful.